Why is it that when a man masters his emotions, reads the room like a strategist, and stops being predictable, he suddenly becomes unsettling? Today, we're going to uncover why emotionally intelligent men are not only misunderstood, but feared, and how this fear is rooted in power, not love. The true measure of command within any relationship is rarely brazen display. It is the silent mastery of the emotional board on which two people move. A man who sees anger rise in another and chooses calm, who senses joy swell and yet withholds premature celebration, who observes fear flicker across a face and offers no obvious comfort. This man wields a latent authority that is both disarming and unassailable. His power is rooted in the fact that he is never the first to flinch. To the untrained eye, he seems gentle, perhaps even passive, but underneath that composure lies a calculation so precise that most do not realize they have been measured until their own pulse betrays them. Women accustomed to steering the emotional tenor of an encounter in him a mirror that refuses to reflect their storms. Instead, it absorbs, assesses, and quietly stores every data point for later use. Imagine the common scenario: a sudden quarrel over a perceived slight. One party raises her voice, hoping the clash of sound will force a capitulation. In response, the emotionally intelligent man lowers his tone until it becomes almost conspiratorial. The effect is jarring. Rather than rising to meet the crescendo, he creates a vacuum, and into that vacuum rush all the insecurities, the hurried justifications, the unspoken motives of the aggressor. Control shifts effortlessly. The one who expected to dominate now finds herself compelled to explain, to rationalize, to defend. It is not loud dominance that has prevailed, but the subtle gravity of composure. From that moment forward, she intuits, often subconsciously, that her usual arsenal of emotional escalation will be blunted each time it strikes this particular target. Such a man does not merely resist manipulation, he anticipates it. Emotional intelligence is reconnaissance. He tracks micro-expressions, pauses, slips of tongue, the dilation of pupils that accompanies desire or fear. While others react, he catalogs. The knowledge accumulated gives him the leverage to press an advantage later, when the stakes are higher. Even affection becomes an instrument of strategy. He knows precisely when to withhold warmth until the absence aches, and exactly how to return it in measured doses that feel like reprieve. The recipient, grateful for the thaw, seldom notices how the rhythm of attachment is no longer hers to set. Women fear this because fear attends uncertainty. In the presence of such calibrated restraint, familiar scripts crumble. The tears that once guaranteed an apology are met with a patient silence inviting self-reflection. The flirtatious tease that usually provokes chase instead elicits an amused, non-committal smile, forcing her to wonder whether the bait was too obvious or the fish simply uninterested. Over time, she realizes he does not play by the sentimental algebra on which erstwhile victories depended. Jealousy multiplied by attention equals reassurance. Withdrawal plus pursuit equals proof of value. His mathematics is colder, and because it is colder, it is clearer. If he returns after distance, it is not because loneliness coerced him, but because he decided the moment served his larger design. She senses this, and the sense unsettles. Power in emotional control also means mastery over the self. The man who cannot be induced to rage cannot be baited into mistakes. The man who will not drown in euphoria cannot be lured by promises of forbidden delight. Temptation relies on the prospect of ungoverned feeling. Remove that prospect and the tempter stands powerless. In social circles, this self-command radiates an aura of inevitability. Business allies assume he must have deeper resources. Friends trust his counsel. Rivals tread carefully because the boundaries of his patience remain invisible. A woman confronting such presence knows instinctively that alliance with him could elevate her. Yet conflict with him offers no predictable reward. Uncertainty breeds anxiety. Anxiety often masquerades as fear. Yet, crucially, his control is not cold indifference, at least not always. He feels everything, he merely declines to broadcast it. This refusal to give the world an emotional map keeps adversaries blind. When affection is finally expressed, its rarity magnifies its worth, and the recipient treasures it precisely because she cannot predict the next appearance. Scarcity, after all, the engine of value. Thus, the emotionally intelligent man does not merely shield himself, he creates dependence. She begins to crave the reassurance of a smile precisely because she knows he distributes them with purposeful restraint. What begins as admiration slides, almost imperceptibly, into apprehension. If his smile can warm, his silence can freeze. Control extends beyond words and expressions to the orchestration of environment. Lighting, music, seating position. Each becomes a lever. He will dim the lamp, just enough that conversation softens, lowering defenses. He will select melodies calibrated to the tempo of the night's objective, steering mood without a syllable of instruction. When a woman later recollects the evening, she may remark that everything felt perfect without realizing perfection was engineered. The discovery, once made, can inspire awe or dread, never neutrality. For to realize one has been guided is to confront the possibility of future guidance, and the prospect of invisible strings inspires a primordial caution. This caution intensifies because emotional intelligence allows him to grant space without surrendering terrain. Should she retreat, he does not chase, he waits, and waiting reframes his worth. Time, once weaponized in his silence, becomes an echo reminding her who dictates rhythm. She may test his care by absence. Absence only verifies his independence, a trait intoxicating to witness yet intimidating to manage. The balance of desire shifts. She now seeks signs that she still holds influence, and her pursuit reveals vulnerability he notes for future advantage. The architecture of most modern courtships still rests on an old scaffolding. He pursues, she evaluates, he displays, she selects, he proves, she rewards. These roles are comfortable precisely because they are predictable. Into this tableau steps the emotionally intelligent man, and the first thing he does is remove himself from the expected position of petitioner. He does not flood her phone with messages seeking validation, nor does he orchestrate grand spectacles to purchase admiration. Instead, he observes in silence, learning where her boundaries lie, and where they merely appear to lie. The absence of ritual pursuit leaves her without the usual cues that announce she is in control of tempo. She reaches instinctively for familiar levers, delay in reply, calculated coyness, a hint of jealousy, but finds them unresponsive. Control collapses not because he seizes it by force, but because she discovers the handle is no longer attached to anything. In his presence, the currency of attention is revalued, whereas most men spend it lavishly, inflating its supply and devaluing each compliment. This man issues attention in rare, deliberate installments. The result is a spike in demand as she replays conversations to decode subtext, scrutinizes pauses for concealed meanings, wonders why a seemingly trifling remark was met with an inscrutable half-smile. Her mind, once the marketplace where her own desirability set prices, now becomes a laboratory dissecting his intent. Questions multiply: does he admire me or merely find me useful? If useful, to what end? If admiring, why does he not hurry to show it? Each question tightens a net spun of her own curiosity, and the hunter becomes the captured specimen. Traditional tactics, provoking jealousy by flaunting other admirers, withholding affection until he begs for return, misfire against a man who refuses to compete on that terrain. He greets news of other suitors with amused detachment, as though watching children scrabble for trinkets. This detachment is not indifference to her value, it is confidence in his own. By refusing to contest, he reframes desirability as a resource she must prove worthy to access. The theater of rivalry collapses, for a play cannot proceed when the principal actor exits the stage. She is left performing to an empty audience, acutely aware that the one spectator who mattered has strolled to the lobby. Even conflict, which many consider the crucible of intimacy, fails to restore her advantage. When she confronts him, perhaps hoping to trigger contrition or impassioned defense, he listens with a calm that feels like cold marble. His replies arrive measured, referencing facts rather than feelings, exposing contradictions in her narrative without raising his voice. The usual emotional storms she conjures to steer a partner now dissipate against the windless surface of his restraint. A truth emerges: storms cannot push what refuses to unfurl its sails. She recognizes, often with a shiver, that escalation only reveals her volatility, while his unruffled demeanor wins the invisible scorecard of power. Behind this dynamic lies a deeper principle. The emotionally intelligent man is guided by sovereign self-approval. He neither hungers for praise nor dreads disapproval, rendering him invulnerable to the two most common instruments of social influence: Compliments slide off because he has audited their worth. Criticism fails because he has preemptively issued himself the verdict that matters. A woman conditioned to wield admiration as reward and withdrawal as punishment confronts a fortress built of internal validation. Her emotional artillery lands harmlessly on stone walls, and she must negotiate entry on his terms. A reversal so profound that unease blossoms into apprehension. The disruption extends to the future she tries to imagine with him. Conventional fantasies, grand gestures, predictable anniversaries, public declarations depend on forecasting how a man will behave under established customs. But this man designs his own calendar, celebrates victories invisible to others, and marks loyalty in acts too private to Instagram. Because she cannot predict, she cannot plan. Because she cannot plan, she cannot prepare contingencies. In strategic terms, he has seized the high ground of uncertainty, compelling her to fight a pill on terrain she did not choose. Each day with him is a campaign, briefed only at dawn, and the strategist who knows the battlefield first wins before swords touch. Discomfort intensifies in social settings. Friends notice his composure and direct questions toward him, shifting spotlight away from her cultivated narrative. He engages effortlessly yet reveals little, a demonstration of dominance coded as humility. Her status, once amplified by serving as arbiter of his acceptance in the group, now wavers as observers sense he is the gravitational center. She realizes influence cannot be reclaimed by louder laughter or sharper quips. Influence resides where attention settles, and attention settles on the figure who appears least eager to command it. One might suppose that such imbalance would invite retreat, yet paradoxically it fosters attachment. Psychological experiments prove that partial reinforcement, rewards dispensed unpredictably, creates stronger addiction than consistent satisfaction. The emotionally intelligent man embodies partial reinforcement incarnate. Tomorrow he may reveal a fragment of vulnerability that feels like a dawn after a long night, then lapse again into sphinx, like calm. Each rare disclosure acquires the weight of revelation, convincing her she is on the verge of unlocking a treasure, whose depth she can only guess. Thus, the disruption of power does not repel her, it binds her to the puzzle. She might attempt to restore equilibrium by mirroring his detachment. The imitation betrays itself. True self, possession is effortless ease, feigned indifference is measurable strain. He notes the microsecond delay before her gaze averts, the forced laughter a shade too brittle, the text sent precisely 2 hours after his because she counted minutes like beads on a rosary. By reflecting her own tactics back at her, he holds up a polished shield, and she sees within it not his weakness, but her own exposed maneuvering. Fear blooms not of him, but of the mirror he provides, a reflection stripped of romantic myth, lit by the harsh clarity of strategy. Some observers call this dynamic cruel, yet cruelty implies intent to harm, whereas his intent is simply to remain unconquered. His battlefield is not love but sovereignty. If harmony arises, he will cherish it. If strife appears, he will outlast it. She senses this steadfastness and understands that winning him cannot follow the scripts she has rehearsed. To gain audience with such a sovereign, tribute must be paid in authenticity, for authenticity is the one language flattery cannot counterfeit. The emotionally intelligent man studies the social arena much as a seasoned chess player scans the board before a single piece is moved. He recognizes that every gesture, every pause, every anecdote is a tell, an involuntary reveal of strategy. Where the inattentive suitor hears stories meant simply to entertain, he listens for the motives that need the dough of narrative. Was the tale offered to elicit sympathy, to inflate stature, to test boundaries? The answer dictates his next move. If she brandishes a past betrayal, he notes whether the emphasis lands on her hurt or her triumph. From that emphasis, he infers whether she seeks protection, absolution, or the thrill of recounting conquest. Because he recognizes the pattern before it solidifies, he can reroute its trajectory, steering conversation toward depths she did not intend to plumb, but now cannot resist exploring. Patterns present themselves not only in words but in timing. An hour grows late, the fragrance of anticipation thickens, and she lifts her glass with deliberate slowness. Most men would take the cue in advance. He, however, rewinds the evening's cadence. How often did she glance at her phone? How quickly did laughter follow his compliments? Where did her gaze settle when silence fell? Such data renders visible an invisible graph of escalating tension. If the curve rises too precipitously, he applies a subtle brake, suggests a short walk, introduces an unexpected anecdote, asking her to imagine the scent of salt air on a distant coast. Momentarily disoriented, she finds the temperature of desire recalibrated, and desire seasoned by restraint matures into something more potent than the mechanical heat she had anticipated. He also catalogs transactions of status in group settings. When someone interrupts her, does she accept the slight or reclaim the floor? Does she expand others' jokes or wait to deliver her own punchlines? Does she praise an absent friend or diminish one present? Each choice locates her on a grid of dominance and deference. Most observers register only who spoke the longest. He notes who rewrote the room's hierarchy with a single well-placed sigh. Later, should she attempt to shift blame for an awkward moment onto a convenient scapegoat, he recalls the sigh, the glance, the pre-existing hierarchy, and recognizes the tactic deflection. He does not contest it openly, he stores it. The day will come when she attributes discontent to random fate, and he will disarm the deflection by naming the pattern with surgical precision, leaving no refuge in plausible deniability. Tactics exist in the digital realm as well. She posts a wistful quote hours after a deep conversation. He measures the life of meaning in her online breadcrumb. Was the quote an echo of something intimate they shared, an invitation for him to publicly claim resonance, or a gambit to gauge whether his silence will sting? He refrains from the predictable, like the trite heart emoji. Instead, he may reference a parallel concept during their next private exchange, demonstrating that he caught the signal but would rather keep the frequency exclusive. By declining to validate her in the public square, he diminishes the currency of external applause and strengthens the clandestine economy of their own discourse. An economy where he holds the mint. Even kindness, a coin many spend without scrutiny, serves as a diagnostic tool in his hands. He offers a small favor, perhaps a thoughtful recommendation or a timely reminder, and then waits. Should gratitude arrive perfunctorily, he learns that favors for her are commodities, not treasures. If thanks appear in layers, verbal, written, and finally enacted in a return gesture, he gauges her capacity for reciprocity. Repetition of this experiment across varied contexts unveils whether generosity springs from authentic regard or from the ledger of transaction. Each iteration, the map of her behavioral territory grows more detailed, and hidden roads that others never notice become avenues he can traverse at will. Patterns often hide beneath contradictions. A woman may declare independence yet flinch when decisions loom, insist on spontaneity yet schedule every hour. He does not dismiss contradiction as hypocrisy. He treats it as a fingerprint unique to her psyche. Beneath each inconsistency lies a fear or longing yearning for reconcilement, rather than pointing out the conflict, which would provoke defensiveness. He offers scenarios that compel her to experience the tension viscerally, a spontaneous weekend trip hinted, but never booked until she herself chooses decisiveness, a quiet evening where plans dissolve into music and candlelight, confronting her with absence of schedule. In these controlled experiments, she reacts, reveals, recalibrates, and each reaction feeds his ledger of insight. Masks, once lifted, do not always fall away, sometimes they shift. He anticipates the metamorphosis. When she senses that familiar tactics falter, she may adopt a new persona, the carefree hedonist replacing the conscientious planner, the nurturing confidante supplanting the alluring siren. Lesser observers see reinvention. He sees defensive camouflage. He tests its fabric gently. A probing question here, a minute of strategic silence there, and the seams unravel, exposing the original weave. His awareness of the mask does not compel him to expose it publicly. Rather, he regards it as a spare key to doors she thought locked. Unmasking depends on patience. Time is the solvent that dissolves varnish. He lets time work. He may postpone a conversation until fatigue lowers her guard, or revisit a past topic when new variables render the old explanation inadequate. Each revisit strips another layer. Paradoxically, she often feels relieved by his persistence, mistaking it for empathy. It is empathy, but tempered by a scholar's fascination with truth's architecture. He empathizes enough to coax disclosure, yet maintains distance enough to catalog what emerges without contamination by his own sentiment. The ultimate revelation arrives when she realizes he has been reading her margins while she focused on the boldface. Fear germinates in that epiphany. Power once rested on her ability to choreograph perception. Now she confronts an observer who weaponizes perception itself. She may protest that relationships should not feel like excavations, yet finds herself volunteering ever deeper strata of memory, compelled by the hypnotic safety his understanding offers. Safety and exposure intertwine like vines climbing the same trellis. The higher they ascend, the more she showcases her vulnerabilities to the very gaze that could dismantle defenses she herself barely remembers building. Intimacy, in its common interpretation, is a reckless affair. It spills forward like wine across a white tablecloth, unplanned, unrestrained, often irreversible. Most men, in the rush to impress or to possess, treat emotional exposure as currency, to be spent quickly. Declarations of longing after brief encounters, confessions of childhood scars, offered like flowers at the altar of rapid bonding. They mistake vulnerability for a performance and mistake performance for trust. The emotionally intelligent man, far more deliberate, far more dangerous, does not indulge in such spontaneous theatrics. His intimacy is calculated, purposeful. He reveals only what serves a function, each layer unveiled with the timing of a military campaign. Where others burn with blind passion, he engineers warmth with precision. The difference unnerves those who expect intimacy to feel like a flood. With him, it feels like a tide you did not notice was rising until it is waist deep. He speaks little of his past at first. When he does, it is never in the romanticized tones of nostalgia or regret. Rather, he selects memories the way a sculptor selects marble, only those that can be shaped into something useful. A story of betrayal might surface, not to win pity, but to explain a boundary. A tale of former ambition may be offered, not to brag, but to foreshadow the scale of his inner architecture. Each revelation is a tool, and every tool has a purpose. This restraint does not indicate aloofness but control. He sees intimacy not as confession, as leverage. The more selectively he shares, the more valuable his disclosures become. To the woman who finds herself receiving these rare fragments, it begins to feel like an honor. She begins to believe she is the exception, and the belief intoxicates more deeply than flattery ever could. In contrast, passion driven by impulse thrives on immediacy. It cannot wait. It demands declarations in the dark, promises at dawn, and decisions during storms. It confuses urgency with depth. The emotionally intelligent man denies it this momentum. He does not kiss in haste, does not rush to label what unfolds between two people. The slowness of his advance is not hesitation but scrutiny. He observes not only how she moves toward him but why. What hunger drives her gaze? What absence does she wish to fill? If he were to answer her craving too soon, he would forfeit the most important truth, how she behaves when not yet satisfied. His withholding is not cruelty, it is surveillance. Only when the full shape of her emotional hunger has revealed itself does he begin to offer nourishment. Precisely measured, always reversible, he avoids the trap of mutual collapse. Many relationships built on blind passion deteriorate into codependence, each partner drowning in the other's chaos. He knows this pattern. He has watched others mistake entanglement for closeness, thinking that constant sharing, constant proximity, constant emotional mirroring equals love. He does not reflect back her emotions automatically. When she cries, he does not immediately mirror sadness. When she panics, he does not panic in return. He absorbs, analyzes, and responds only when a response improves the situation. This creates a paradox. She feels seen deeply, but not necessarily indulged. In time, she begins to trust his presence, not because he amplifies her feelings, but because he stabilizes them. It is a new form of intimacy, one rooted not in shared spirals, but in his capacity to remain still while others spin. Sexual intimacy follows the same principle. Where passion pursues climax as its sole destination, he sees in seduction a language, not a race. The emotionally intelligent man is aware of pacing, tone, progression, aware that tension postponed heightens not only desire but dependence. He gives enough to kindle fire, never enough to exhaust it. Each encounter builds upon the last, not just physically, but emotionally. Her body becomes a map, and each touch is a notation in a growing lexicon of meaning. Because he does not rush to conquer, he extends the theater of conquest indefinitely, allowing anticipation to ferment into something rare. The result is not frenzy but obsession. The difference is subtle but absolute. Frenzy fades, obsession lingers. This strategic deployment of intimacy does not mean he is immune to emotion, only that he respects it as a volatile element, useful only when contained. He does not fear falling in love, but he fears falling without comprehension. He must understand not only what he feels, what she feels, and why those feelings converge or clash. Emotional chaos blinds, he chooses clarity. When he finally offers his heart, it is not tossed blindly into the fire, but placed like a king upon the board, ready to move with the weight of calculation behind it. Love becomes not surrender, but alignment of forces. He understands that not all intimacy is physical or verbal. Sometimes it is the pause before answering, the look held one beat too long, the silence that replaces apology, because apology would be too easy. Strategic intimacy appears in the restraint to not text immediately, in the choice to let her wonder for a night, in the discipline to respond not with, "I miss you," but with, "How are you holding up?" The second line offers care, the first offers self. The emotionally intelligent man delays offering himself until he knows what the other truly seeks. Is it the man, or the feeling of being desired by him? Strategic intimacy waits for that answer before advancing. What disturbs many women is not that this man feels too little, but that he feels without losing command. In a world where emotional mess is worn as proof of depth, he violates the modern expectation. He does not cry for approval, does not rage for validation. His emotions are not weapons, not confessions, but instruments played with skill. This unnerves because it means he can connect without unraveling, and that means she can never be certain how deeply he is entangled. Only that, if he is, it is by choice, not accident. The intimacy he builds does not beg, it compels. It does not plead, it penetrates. To receive such intimacy is to face a mirror held unshakingly. Most people flinch at such clarity. They prefer a lover who stumbles alongside them, whose brokenness makes them feel whole by comparison. But he offers no such refuge. He stands whole and asks, "Will you rise to meet me?" This question, unspoken yet palpable, becomes the core tension of the bond. Not, "Do you want me?" but "Can you understand me?" Not, "Will you stay?" but "Do you know what staying means when nothing is hidden and nothing is blindly forgiven?" In a world that often rewards noise over nuance and mistakes performance for presence, the emotionally intelligent man operates like a quiet revolution. He appends expectations not with defiance but with discipline, not with volume but with vision. His strength lies in his precision, how he listens, how he withholds, how he reveals not all at once, in deliberate fragments designed to disarm rather than impress. To the woman used to holding the reins of emotional currency, he becomes an anomaly she cannot categorize, a presence she cannot predict. And this unpredictability becomes the source of both fascination and fear. She cannot manipulate what will not react, cannot control what sees the whole board before she even makes a move. In his silence, she hears judgment. In his restraint, she senses strategy. Yet beneath the calculation lies something deeper, a man who refuses to be conquered because he has already conquered himself. He does not chase validation, he issues invitations. He does not beg for love, he curates loyalty. His intimacy is not accidental, it is earned and therefore sacred. This is the problem we set out to expose, not why women dislike emotionally intelligent men, but why they often fear them. Because these men see through performance, dismantle manipulation, and hold a mirror to motives many would rather leave in shadow. In their presence, masks fall not by force, but by futility, and to be truly seen, without distortion, without flattery, without illusion, is the most terrifying intimacy of all. So the question is not, why do women fear such men? The question is, what becomes of the world when more men begin to see this way and refuse to unsee it?